All right, we're live, and you're making noise. Sorry, I was hearing you over the background there. And so, my father saw the movie The Searchers when it came out in 1956. I believe he saw it with both my uncle and my aunt. Saw the movie The Searchers when it came out. Oh shit, 1956. I believe he. You got to get off the page, Joey. Sorry, folks. So, as I said before, my father saw The Searchers in 1956 when it came out with my uncle and I believe my aunt at the Fox. I believe it was the Fox Venice that he saw that film. And they liked that film so much that they saw it twice. And reviews of the film were like, they said it was good, and some said it was mediocre at best. And it wasn't until years later, but there was always, my father said it was the younger generation that saw that film that really kind of pushed it to the pinnacle of the success that it was. My father being born just before the baby boom generation. I believe they call it the baby bust, but people like Martin Scorsese and George Lucas and Steven Spielberg all had kind of an affinity for that film. And I know when Martin Scorsese first saw it, he was mesmerized like my father. And it wasn't until I believe, 10, 15 years after the film where it really started to gain its classic status, and many consider that the best Western film ever made, and that is certainly debatable. But it was kind of like when Blade Runner first came out. A lot of people, thought, it got mixed reviews, and then now it's considered a classic, and that's kind of the same way The Searchers ran. It was liked by a young, hip crowd, and then it became, when this young, hip crowd kind of gained power within the film industry. That's when it became really a classic. Now, Joey, you saw this film, and you just saw this film just now again. And what was your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, so you are listening to and watching Transparency and Merit, by the way, and we've got some of the great crowd that's usually here. What's up? Yeah, I watched The Searchers, kind of on YouTube. You can watch basically the movie in 10 parts, but in order to meet YouTube requirements, the incremental, the length of each increment of the film is an abbreviate. Let's pick the best parts, basically. So you get kind of a nice recap of the movie without watching the whole thing. And I had seen it a long time ago, and I didn't realize too much about it. I think originally, the whole Indian, woo 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 kind of thing, kind of just it just wasn't. When I was really young, I enjoyed watching cowboys and Indian type stuff, but this has some of that cowboy and Indian theme going on. But I went around and I saw a couple of reviews, and it doesn't seem like the reviews came to anywhere near some of the conclusions that I came to, and I think we'll get to them in a little bit, maybe towards the end of talking about Searchers. But it was interesting to see the similarities. Not a tremendous amount, but there's some similarities there between Star Wars and Searchers. This isn't really a compare and contrast anyways. We just wanted to kind of discuss a little bit about the phenomenon that, you know, we experienced as kids with Star Wars, and how the Searchers fits in, and, you know, maybe, you know, getting into a little bit about John Ford and what we do know, and you know, I thought we'd go there, but I found it interesting that you found these two films to use. Is it mainly because of that scene where I think they lose basically their aunt and uncle or relatives, and, you know, their home gets burned down in similar fashion to, you know, Luke Skywalker and this other family. So yeah, why don't you? Am I on the right path there?
Well, the main reason I bring that up is in 1983. You know, the movie review show Siskel and Ebert did a thing on Star Wars and why Star Wars was so popular, and they tied in, you know, the samurai films and the classic westerns, and the main classic western that they used was the Searchers. And it was really after they kind of put that together and the way in which they showed it, I really began to appreciate the film. Now, I'd seen, the first time I saw the film The Searchers was on television, and then my father took me to see it at the Bing Theater. The Bing Theater was right next to the Museum of Art, and they showed classic films. And I liked it, but you know, I was about 11 years old at the time, so I didn't understand the full artistry of the movie until, you know, like I was about 13, 14, 15 years of age. And then I understood the full impact of the film. And, you know, there are things that I don't know if would play well today. And, you know, there are things that for me that you have to overlook as a person who likes modern films. But this film, I mean, if you're studying film and you're studying the progression of film, John Ford's films are things that are films that you want to study. As far as he was one of the first people who really told stories without words, and
Absolutely. Symbology, the symbolism in The Searchers is very subtle, and it's easy to miss, but there's so much that to me was just so critical to the overall point. John Ford was insider baseball. He had a lot of military connections in his family, and a lot of films where he did make these sort of portrayals were oftentimes, I think, maybe confused as real history. There was a time at one point when some of the more outspoken critics were bold enough to say that this is really propaganda, and they doubt that these are the ways the West has won, and certain accounts, you know, were probably fictionalized. I haven't done enough research on it, to be honest, but I have heard a few. You know, I've heard some discussions about John Ford that are highly critical of his portrayals, especially of women and their roles in the West. But this, as far as overall just entertaining value here, John Wayne is an amazing. I don't know if I've heard him called the anti-hero, but he's sort of a dark hero and had a lot of similarities to a character with a peculiar name, the lead Indian, who was named Scar, and it kind of got me thinking. And I'd put together a few pieces, and you know, we'll get to that again, like I said. But yeah. As far as Star Wars goes, I mean, I don't remember ever. I do remember going to a few movies for some reason. there were just some movies where you go to the theater and there was that line that wrapped around the building. It wasn't always a blockbuster film. It was sometimes just a highly anticipated film, but I don't think anything beats Star Wars for that. It was just not only, yeah, like you could drive by a theater for months and see that line around the building. It was a pretty unbelievable time for that movie, and the kind of just cultural awareness there was of it.
Well, I remember I saw Star Wars on opening night. I think my father took my brother and I out of school, and there wasn't a crowd that had built up yet. And we saw that at the Grauman's Chinese, and we were completely blown away by it. We were like, "This is the greatest." At 7 years old, it's like the greatest film we've ever seen. And then when we walked out, we saw the line just stretching around the block, and all this news about Star Wars. I mean, people, word of mouth really put that forward. And the Hollywood brass did not. I don't know if they really understood it at that time. And it kind of goes to show you that sometimes the brass doesn't necessarily understand what is popular and what isn't. And we're in a time right now that is really super critical. And, the stuff about John Ford and John Wayne, these were people of their time. They came at a time when you had to struggle a lot more, when you missed a few meals. And they were of that mindset of struggle. And, the people that came across the plains, they had to struggle for food and resources. And sometimes that struggle was deadly. And that struggle was deadly not just in America, but all over the world. And you came to it as a point of struggle. And I think people tend to lose sight of that. And I think it's important for people to have kind of an open mind on what people were really going through at at the time, and missing meals. And you're just a human being. You're hearing that there's food over there. There's land over there with plenty of food. With food that we can survive. And that was the West was primarily about survival. And it was about a conflict of cultures, and it's not so easy when cultures collide. It's not.
Well, it's in spades in The Searchers, and that's a big part of it. That there's this sort of this girl is forced out of the home and is taken away by the Comanche chief. And there's a very interesting dichotomy, I guess, between what would be considered the civilized or Christian world and the natives. And it becomes very, very interesting when you start to, which are both, in my view, constructs. And so both just these kind of made up, ways of life that are not, they don't determine whether you are alive or dead. These are just things that are part of our world. And this movie really has an interesting kind of focus on the girl who starts off in this kind of civilized home. The opening scene, they open the door and it's this beautiful landscaped, that view of Arizona. I think it's Arizona, or I forget what canyon that is over there. But it's a very famous location. But you show right away, like, just the I think what the focus was, the security and just being inside, and it's cozy and warm and dark. And then this door opens and you got this big landscape, and it really draws a picture. And when the girl is forced away from home, um, she goes and is captured by the Indians, and she becomes an Indian, or at least adapts to their culture, and so now this once Christian, or just or the girl that comes from the civilized sort of family is now part of the natives, and then after, of course, not to be a spoiler, but there is a spoiler alert. Then when she is brought back home, almost forced, before almost being killed by John Wayne, they take her home, and so now suddenly she just returns back to away from native culture and back to this sort of security blanket of that family, that civilized sort of surrounding. So I liked that a lot, and it was very obvious to me. And there's still more to go on it. I mean, there is so much going on with the symbolism. When John Wayne appears at the home he comes up and they're all excited that he's arrived, and he's got with him something. I don't know if you remember what he was carrying, but it was pretty interesting. It was a big sword, but it wasn't called a sword. I think it was what did they call it?
Called a saber.
A saber.
Yeah.
And so it really took me on a journey, because I looked up saber, and it took me to the word cavalry, and it took me to the word component, and these are all just connected words. Scar, you have scar. This all leads me to think, and also remember when the little girl is sent off. Oh, dang, I forgot her name now. God, I'm so bad with the names. But the girl gets sent off. Debbie. And do you remember before she leaves, they give her something?
She is given a Purple Heart.
She's given a doll. The doll was named Topsy, and it was real interesting. So, topsy turvy just means confusion, and it was a scene of confusion. She didn't know what to do. She leaves. The dog follows her. She's like, I don't want the dog to follow me. She sends the dog back. So it's this just very densely loaded scene. And John Wayne also, so yeah, he has the saber, and he ends up giving it to one of the young boys, maybe his nephew, or I can't remember. And he just hands it to him, and it was kind of like a passing of the guard. But yeah, this was the girl leaving with her doll named Topsy. To me, symbolized so much, but it was a complete girl leaving, and it didn't matter where she ended up. She was gonna be in reality wherever she landed, and she definitely shows that over the course of the film.
But if you come to think about it, to a degree, Marty, I mean, John Wayne is kind of like Vader. Marty is kind of like Luke, because he wants to do the right thing. He wants to save the girl. And then I guess the Indian Scar would be kind of like Palpatine to a degree. And they're both men are driven. Both Scar and Ethan, the John Wayne character, are both the John Wayne character. Ethan and the Indian Scar. I forgot the guy who played his name, but the guy who played the character. But they're both driven by revenge, and they both want control. They're both men who don't want to compromise, and who have experienced loss. And Ethan Brittles, he feels violated by the fact that she, Debbie is being raised by the Indians, and he thinks that that's just an abomination, and he wants to end that, and Marty wants to save her, and
What I
you know,
found also interesting is because of this flashback to cowboys and Indians, even though it's technically a timepiece movie, you really have to consider what the country was going through in 1956 a whole lot. Like you said, got just gotten out of that depression a little over a decade before that, and a whole lot transpired. But him coming to the home with that sword, we don't know what he had done with the sword, but to me, and with the chief Indian named Mark, this led me down the path to thinking that this was a movie. The Searchers was about a search for the placenta or origins of life itself, and it's a heavy duty movie in that sort of way. You asked me if I thought it was kind of corny earlier when I watched it, and no, it was jam packed with this all through the movie.
well, like you,
Sorry if I totally derailed where you were going.
yeah, it probably did, and then my mind went to different places, but yeah, I mean, there's so much, like I said, symbolism, and this was 11 years, or probably when it was being made, it was 10 years after the Second World War, and then it was 11 years when it was released, 1956. And it was 3 years after the Korean War, and we were still very seeped in the Red Scare, and America was still extremely anti-communist. And there was no, I mean, there was no Cold War. I don't think there were any Cold War sensibilities much in the film, but John Wayne was extraordinarily anti-communist, and I think that John Ford perhaps was as well. I don't know if he was as invested as John Wayne was. And like I said, these people came from a time in history, and sometimes history is told to the victors, and sometimes it's twisted around again. And really, no film really does capture, reality. There's only a sense of reality. Even modern day films, on average, don't necessarily capture the sense of reality. The only time, again, that I've seen like senses of reality really being seen was in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and then it got back to fantasy, and even the some of the postmodern hood movies are not necessarily as realistic and real as they could be. There are a few, but on average, there are things that are kind of preachy and that have a point of view that that drown out the reality of the situation, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for reality, movies aren't that place. But I mean, there are a few films that are starkly real, and those were primarily of the late 1960s and 70s is when that happened.
Yeah, and I disagree. I think there's so much truth in movies. I think that they're vehicles for moving forward certain discussions and narratives in the mainstream. I think they are conduits to possibly a fake history or fake false information. It Movies come out all the time. Every year there's a movie, it seems. One of the first movies, in fact, was about space, right? Going to the moon or something. And so I feel like there is a continual effort to present this sort of image of an expectation of what is outer space. There's been so many dramatizations of outer space. It's unbelievable. But they all sort of show this same sort of concepts, and they try to keep the science sort of um, linear and kind of faithful to one another. While I think a lot of it is completely misdescribed, but it's there to hold up a narrative, and all the space movies, and Star Wars did just an incredible job in those first three. I think we were talking about it earlier too. I think as far as a trilogy goes, I can't think of a better played trilogy, because the original Star Wars is so great. You're really expecting, you couldn't wait for Empire, and then Empire comes out, and it was such a damn. It was my favorite of the three, but it was the perfect placement, because then Return of the Jedi comes in, and then you just had to go see it, and we all did many times, and it was just perfectly played. I don't think Rocky was great, but it just didn't have the same kind of spark or feel for it. Star Wars for me was, and it sucks. I was so young, and it just really hasn't happened since. But wow, what an amazing change to. I guess I was so young; it wasn't a change. I just thought this was how the movie experience was always going to be like.
Yeah, because Star Wars would have been one of your first. And my father was always, he was a film fan. Like, I mean, and he was taking me to classics even at 4. Like, he took me to see Chaplin, and again, he took me to see both classic and the recent. He was both. He liked both modern films and older films. But yeah, I mean, Star Wars, and the difference between Star Wars and The Searchers was that Star Wars, putting it off the ground and getting it off the ground was far more difficult, because people were really still skeptical, even though George Lucas had a big hit with American Graffiti. This film was really unusual. I actually knew somebody who read for the part of Luke Skywalker, and he actually knew Mark Hamill, and he thought, the script was just like, it was. He couldn't relate to the script, and he had gotten a part in The Outlaw Josie Wales, and the guy said to Mark Hamill, said, "Good luck with this turkey. I just got The Outlaw Josie Wales," and his part got cut out, and that film went on to just really rise above. And nobody thought, when they read, a lot of the people who were reading the script, like for the part of Luke Skywalker, they thought, this stuff, they didn't get it at the time when they read it. Now, there were people that did, but and a lot of the executives, they didn't get it. They didn't get on the screen. They couldn't relate to it. With The Searchers, I think it was just another picture, and it was no struggle to get it made because it was John Ford. And when Star Wars came out, it was a hit. When The Searchers came out, it was a hit much later. I think it made a profit, but it didn't turn into the classic that it did until, like I said, the people of my father's age group, who loved it at the time, gained power within the cinema, and they were the ones who brought it to the forefront. And that's sometimes how it works. I mean, there are times when films are not classics at the time they come out, but turn out, like I said, Blade Runner is a classic. The Wanderers is a classic now. When it came out, it wasn't so much. So there are films that when they come out later are sometimes you look at them later and they're really good. Joe, do you have anything to add before we call this show a day? Is there any other tidbits of information that we have?
No, but I definitely like how people are kind of looking. I look at the comments now, and and they're so much different. I think when you and I kind of come with a little bit of a better point, Thursday nights might be the right night. I think it's a perfect night. Maybe we should continue on with maybe a movie series, and I think we have a few ideas we were throwing around earlier, and kind of go down that, build around that. But yeah, totally. Dennis asked a good question. He said, when I was talking about all the symbolism, I think is what he's referring to. He said like subliminal stuff, and I wouldn't exactly say it was subliminal because I don't know if it wasn't necessarily a trick. It was just maybe a little bit. It was rare for, I think. I don't know how rare it was actually. I shouldn't say that. It's actually been done forever, but props and set design is so vital to the experience, to making it more real, and also helps bridge gaps for like a timepiece like this, to also kind of maybe snap focus into what the world's going through at the time you're watching the film itself, and just to see how it stands the test of time. That movie stands the test of time because there's so much going on. And I said, I just commented back to Dennis that you do, if you miss it, it passes, and it's not something I think that just subconsciously is supposed to be stuck in your head somewhere. It's just genuinely, it's just as vital as the script itself, and tells its own story. So it makes it more real to me, and that's a lot of really great movies are movies that I enjoy because I think I really enjoy the feeling that you get of maybe seeing a weapon, or the bad guy, the villain bad guy, or some sort of character or something, but then you mix that with the music and something he's standing in front of or behind, and just how it all plays together. It says so much, and yet there's no real dialogue, or there's nothing to really write down on paper except your perception of it. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say on that. Otherwise, yeah, check us out next Thursday.
Yeah, I think next Thursday, and we have a few ideas that might be a little bit provocative on that, and yeah, I mean,
Brian, believe it or not, what I said tonight is provocative, and I'm going to keep going because there's a lot more where that came from. Sorry to cut you off.
well, yeah, I mean, and just our takes on film and cinema, particularly this one. I know a little bit more of the history on it just because my father was such a John Ford fan. Me and Joe interviewed a gentleman, Scott Iman, who wrote both the definitive books on John Ford, Print the Legend, and John Wayne. And John Ford, I mean, the John Ford did, like they would always, at the end of the movie Liberty Valance, or near the end, they said, when the legend becomes true, print the legend. And that's what a lot of people do. And within history, within perceptions, they try to print their perception and they try to make it legend. And with that, Joe, do you have anything to add on to that before I end it? Because that, yeah. Print the legend. That's what people try to do, not the truth. Go ahead, Joe. Do you have
No,
anything to-
I don't think there's any. I mean, there's a whole lot more, and I hope we do another Western at some point. I think there is so much propaganda about the Wild West, but I think it could be pulled into any era. Any decade has its own controversies, so it doesn't really matter if we do get back to Westerns. But man, there's just a when I think about false history and false narratives, one of the first things that comes to mind is the Wild West, and the illusion continues, as they say. All right, I'm all done.
like I said, illusions have always been with us. From stories that were told down to us from our families, from plays, the great Greek tragedies, Shakespeare, and then that translated into dime novels and then into cinema. And like I said, we all, to a degree, printing the legend is what everybody tries to do. And will we ever get to a point of reality? I'm not sure. I want to try to get to a point of reality with transparency and merit, particularly within our cinema stuff, and do things like a little bit more, a little bit more reality. Maybe not complete reality, but more of it. Anyway,
Why not anything in the arts, man? Any form of art and media, article written or video or whatever, podcasts, whatever. I am going to be ruthless. I'm going to continue on a path of showing where the connections are, and I'm not talking about just anything. I'm going for like the important aspects of art and culture, because they do tell a tale of life, and they have so much of our ancient symbolism and ancient art has been purposely ruined and taken apart and dismantled. So hopefully not that knowledge is lost. Hopefully it's somewhere out there, and that's the key too. Is to look. I think to be really ruthless and taking a look at all these forms of art, and and scrutinizing it, and twisting it until it admits what the truth is. And I think that there's, I just don't settle on anybody's word for it. I'm always encouraging people to go look it up yourself. But I'm going to keep at it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
all right. Well, hey, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. And also share the video if you gain anything from it. Maybe share the video on Twitter, on other forms of platforms, and yeah. So like, subscribe, visit our website at Transparency and Merit. We're still working on it. Thank you for listening.